Okay, well, welcome aboard to the second Provider podcast, and I'm very, very stoked to have a very special guest on with me today, Captain Swish, otherwise known as Bruce Duncan. Welcome aboard, Bruce.
Yes, mate. Thanks a lot. Lovely to talk with you.
Now, for those of you that don't know Bruce, I'm sure most of you are listening in do. Bruce has been in the fishing and marine industry for over 40 years, I believe, Bruce. You've
pretty much all of my life.
Yeah, you've been the author of some very informative books. You've imparted your knowledge over the years at fishing and marine seminars. You've written for magazines. Tell us a little bit else about what you've been up to in the industry over the years.
Well, I guess it all started off when I was a little kid, sailing at P class. My brother took me out on his P class at 4 years old, and then I sort of progressed on from that into keelboats, and I got a couple of diplomas. I did a diploma of delinquency, followed by a diploma of irresponsibility, and went ocean racing at 17, and spent probably the next 15 years tripping around the world, ocean racing, delivering boats, and working on tugs and barges up and down the coast. And then I decided I'd try doing responsibility, and worked for Hutch Wilco for 20 years, and just followed my passion of fishing.
Yeah, awesome. So everything's sort of centered around the ocean by the sounds of it?
I'm like a bear with a sore head, as you can imagine, at the moment, because this would be the longest I've not been on the water. In fact, there was 1 year when I was doing Admiral's Cup racing and trialling and all this sort of carry on, that I actually never spent a weekend at home. I was on the water the whole time, and it's in my blood. It's just what it is. It's my happy place, let's say.
That's why I thought I'd love to get you on this podcast. Sort of what we've been exploring for the first few podcasts is New Zealand's affinity with fishing in the ocean, and I don't think there's too many more people that in my yarns over the years that are more passionate about fishing and going out and gathering a feed than yourself. So we're obviously we're close to 4 weeks into lockdown. We'll find out today if we're allowed out at the end of the week. What have you been doing, Bruce? Where have you been holed up, and who have you been spending it with, and what have you been doing?
Well, I've been holed up at home with my lovely wife, Kath, the luckiest woman in the world. She's covered in bruises because every morning she wakes up, she has to pinch herself to realise living with me is just not a dream. What more could you want? So what's really been interesting out of this is that I'm as bored as batshit. I'm grumpy because I can't go fishing and all those good things. But in saying that, I actually dragged down all the rods and reels, and you can probably see a few in the background here, that I've had over all the years, and I've stripped them down and cleaned them, and the same thing with the reels and in my tackle box, just preparing a new tackle box and the likes of that, and looking at the rods over the years, the technology that's changed, and it brings back so many memories of when you had that, and it was the best and flashiest thing you had. And I remember back to the first depth sounder I ever had, which was a paper sounder back in those days. And it's actually, you take a positive out of it, and you look what you've learned over all these years, and you also look at how you can help other people by what we've learned and pass that knowledge on,
Yeah. Excellent. No, I've definitely enjoyed a bit of spare time to do a bit of maintenance like that. All those little chores on the boat that's been saving up for that one day. Well, we've got no excuse at the moment, do we?
Well, you're lucky because you can work on your boat, because mine's on the marina, and I can't even go down to the marina. They've completely locked it up. So the poor boat's been yelling at me, take me fishing and come down and wash me, and that'll be the first thing I'm into, is just go down, wash it up, warm up the motor, and take her out. But at the moment, well, I've just got to behave myself like everyone else does,
Yeah. Now, Bruce, we've obviously got this situation with the pandemic. Lots of people in crook all around the world. You've had your own battle over the last 3 or 4 years, and I take my hat off to you for how you've approached your fight with cancer with such positivity. Been a huge inspiration. What's your take on coronavirus? Is it something that worries you? Is it something that you're going to approach life any differently because of? Well, obviously, people with
Well, I guess
and stuff is...
the cancer has been a big learning curve. There is no cure for what I've got. It's a blood cancer. I've been through massive doses of chemo and a stem cell transplant, and I've been in remission for the last 3 years basically. But unfortunately, it's now back on its way. Who knows how long for? But I haven't got time to think about that. I'm too busy enjoying life. So when you come out of all those little things and you look at what we're going through now, what the really interesting thing I found with the cancer when I was in isolation, which is pretty much what we are now, but I was in a little tiny wee ward on my own, was, and you're sick, you're a very sick puppy dog, and what you have is a situation where you can feel sorry for yourself, same as what we're doing now, but there's only one way that goes, and that takes you down the drain. So if you stop and turn yourself around and take a positive out of it, every negative is positive. So what I do, and it's the same thing now, like I'm doing with this fishing gear, is thinking of the good times. Yeah. All the good times you've had around the world, your mates, your best times. And that's what life's actually all about at the end of the day. It is nothing but memories. We all take the same size coffin, you can't take it with you because I've never seen a hearse with a tow bar. So what you've got to do, stop yourself from getting down and think, I remember the time I was out with bloody Carl and we got into those kingfish, we was having a dive and all the and some of the tricky stuff we used to get up to, like pulling the wool over our mates' eyes and telling them, you cast a bait over there when actually you cast a bait over there and you hook that fish. And that's what life's all about, is memories. So out of the COVID thing, who knows where this is going to go? But all I want to do is hope that people will actually think of the good things rather than negative and help one another to enjoy life.
Yeah, and it's a good chance just to step back, isn't it? And I think I've enjoyed the step back from the same old routine and chance to spend a whole month cooking things from scratch and getting into the garden, planting some veggies and good quality time with the kids and my partner and her son. So it's been... I've really enjoyed these 4 weeks. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, well, I'm the same. I look at it and say to myself, yep, we've done a whole bunch of little different things, but let's not forget about that also when things get back to normal. And what is, the quality of life? Where else in the world would you want to be than New Zealand right now? You imagine being in Hong Kong, Singapore, London, New York, or whatever, in an apartment. Man, life, it would just drive me crazy. We can look outside and see clear skies for a start and the water. And you know what? It's still going to be there when the lockdown comes off and we can get out there and we can just enjoy this beautiful New Zealand we've got and look after it and take more care than we have already.
Not a truer word said, Bruce. I'm looking out at a pretty flat, calm ocean, looking out to the Alderman. She's looking pretty awesome. I'd love to be out there today, but it can wait, and it'll be even more awesome once we can get out there. What are you most looking forward to once we're allowed back out, whatever variation that might be? What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I guess the thing is, obviously, there is just nothing in this world like feeling the strike or feeling the bite and then doing a strike and having a solid hookup. And that's the best drug I've ever known. Not that I've ever done drugs, but I mean, I've had a few rumbos, I must admit. I can't understand how people do drugs, but that's what it is. To me, that is just what life's about. There's just that thrill of that excitement of that strike. How big's that fish? What is it? All those good things. But I'm looking forward to getting out there and getting some fish. And what I've been doing is, with a lot of the fish I get, I take what I need for a feed. That's first and foremost, But right now, as soon as I can get out, I will take a limit. And the reason I'll do that is that I'll put them in the smoker and then I'll backpack them down and then I share them around. I take them up to the cancer ward and I share it with the doctors and nurses up there. They're so good to me, and I pass it on to the old folks around in our neighbourhood so that everybody gets to enjoy it, So even though I'm restricted to what I can do, at least I can do something positive with it, That's what life's about.
I like your style, Bruce, getting out there and providing. Now you've recently written a new book. You've worked on it for quite a few years. It's called Hauraki Gulf Hotspots. Pretty epic compilation, including of all your secret spots in the Hauraki Gulf, including Furuno sounder shots of all your spots. One of the things that strikes me about this book is you've included GPS marks for every single spot. Probably unheard of, fishermen sharing their GPS marks. Why did you do that, Bruce?
You know, I mean, I've been fortunate in my life growing up because, you know, from when I first started fishing with my parents, and again, it's your family ethics of sharing with everybody what you catch and your knowledge, and that's the only way we learn. And what I've seen over the years is obviously 7-day-a-week trading. You've got a lot of dysfunctional families and stresses and problems going on in this world. So you don't have that same father to son passed down knowledge. And there was a huge gap there, and it was only going to get wider, plus the fact that we've got a lot of immigration that's been going on. So you've got people with different cultures as towards what they take and how much they take and all that. So what I've always wanted to do is to share that knowledge. To me, they're not my spots. They're everyone's spots. It's there for everybody, so long as we all take what we need for a feed and let the rest breed. It's as simple as that. So what I really want to do is be able to give the knowledge that I've got over all these years to the people, so that when a family goes out, they've got a good chance of catching a fish. And that way, what happens is that kids that spend time on water learn more life skills than anything else. You know, from balance, looking after each other, looking at the weather, and all those good things that go on. And they are never forgotten. So consequently, if those people that have no boating knowledge at all, or fishing knowledge, can go out, get it, feed a fish, have a good quality family time, come back, that is fantastic. You know, there's nothing better than seeing a kid catch his first fish. You know, we all remember our first fish. You never remember the first tennis ball you hit with golf ball or whatever, but your first fish every time. So that's what I want to do. And, you know, the Furuno product has really made this whole book possible, simply because they've got a patented technique which is called the AccuFish, so that never before have you been able to go over reef structure or through a school of fish and see what depth the fish are and what size they are. And that's particularly important, is that you can then identify the kingfish, or, you know, the snapper in the small areas of kelp and the rocks and likes that we learn about. So habitat is where it's at. That's where fish are. They're only there for food. They get one naughty a year like most of us do, but the rest of the time they're feeding. So consequently, to understand where they are and why they're there at the time of the year, what the surrounding bottom structure's like, and the reason that structure's there, all that information has been put in there. So one, you've got a screenshot which will actually show you what the fish are on the bottom, where they are on the chart plotter, so they can see that. Plus I've put a photograph in there as well, so they can see and identify the area that they're at, plus the GPS, and all the techniques and knowledge you're going to need with the wind and tide direction to fish that in time of year, all that information. So consequently, if everybody respects that and takes what they need for a feed, there's probably, to be perfectly honest with you, there's only probably 2, maybe 3 spots that I wouldn't put in, simply because they wouldn't stand the pressure. And these are spots what I call a bank. You know, we all have those really hard days, moon phase, weather, all right, and I need a feed, so I can go into a little spot that maybe wouldn't even be the size of the house, and I can flick a couple of baits in there, catch a couple of snapper, and fang off. So, you know, they're called a bank. You go to the bank when you need something. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. So you share it with everybody. That's the whole idea, is in future generation, because you know what? The habitat is never going to change. So the fish are there, and people, because of technology today, want to go further and further, thinking the fish are there, you know, bigger and better. I could, you know, take you from my marina at the Outboard Boating Club to Bean Rock, and if you have a look at the cover of the book, there's a pretty big snapper there, and that's what we catch there. So the habitat is where it's at, and the Furuno product is just mind-blowing how good it is and helpful for people. And that's allowed me to do the book. You know, you're never going to make any money out of books because, you know, there's over $20,000 worth of fuel that I've used on, you know, just to do this and 4 years work. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It just means that if someone can get a fish out of it and the family have a good time, that's what life's all about to me.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing resource on the doorstep of our biggest city, isn't it? Hauraki Gulf. Like
it is.
I still remember coming back from overseas, and I went for a dive as part of a skipper's course that I was doing. We left Takapuna boat ramp, and I think we went 10 minutes, and it was probably the most fruitful cray dive I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
I was just blown away. It was so close to Takapuna boat ramp. I see a lot of news out there recently by the likes of the Hauraki Gulf Forum talking about the Hauraki Gulf being in collapse, the fishery being in collapse. What's your views on these headlines? Are they false news? Is it fact? How have you seen the fishery change over the years, and is it still healthy?
There's a number of factors. So let me first go back about 12 years ago. You need to understand the cycle of life. In other words, the fish come in about September to spawn, and they don't all spawn at once. What the snapper will do is they'll come up to the surface, drop a load of spawn, and then go down. All the snapper that are born, they're born on the surface, and they're all born female, and they stay up there for 54 days. They live on a little oil sac underneath the chin, basically, and then they'll progress down. So it's Mother Nature's way of protecting the species. So if there's a storm or particularly a dramatic drop in surface temperature, what will happen is that spawn could die. So consequently, that's why people may say the fish spawn 2 or 3 times a year. Well, there's only one lot of spawn, but they just drop it periodically so that there's a Mother Nature's way of happening. Now, about 10 odd years ago, we had a dramatic drop in water temperature in November, and that went right through to about March. So a lot of fish didn't actually get to spawn. We were catching fish, and they were really reluctant to take a bait, and they're full of baby batter when they shouldn't be. So whether they aborted. So we saw a sort of like a break in the chain. So there was a little bit of a demise in the fishery there. Now, I go back to the days where, you know, we had a limit. The first limit I can remember was 30 snapper. Then dropped down to 20, which is, you know, way too much. And now we're down to obviously 7. But, you know, the other thing that's happened too is pollution. Now, all the infill housing that's going on, the likes of that, we're getting runoff. So I know St Heliers Beach. I was born and raised in St Heliers, and if you look at St Heliers Beach at dead low tide now, there's a lot of like a slimy green algae that's on the bottom. Now, that's as a result of all the nutrients that are run off and a new growth. Unfortunately, what that does is that covers up a lot of the little shellfish, and they're all bivalves, so they're filter feeders, so it's clogging up. So we're progressively getting less shellfish there, and of course with people taking plenty of pippies and things like that, just by natural increase of population, we've got a demise in that area. So the food source is changing. So we've seen a dramatic change in the way in which the snapper have come into the Gulf, and particularly into the inner Gulf, and have moved around. So there's not been the same volume of fish that have come inside into the inner Gulf. The large spawning area out by Anchorite Rock between, say, Kawa and the top of the Coromandels, they still come in there in vast numbers. And that's a very strong fishery out there. I was just talking to Glenn Strongman, a commercial fisherman that I know, and he was just saying that, you know, you guys are so lucky there's so much fish out there. No one's targeting it. You know, there might be a few longliners, but it's not been a trawled area whatsoever like that. So we have got the resource there, but we need to make sure that we look after what we've got. And that goes from, you know, painting your house, pouring stuff down the drain, you know, all that sort of stuff, because whatever we do, it's always going to end up at the lowest point, which is sea level. It's going to run in. So we need to be thinking all our lives of what the future is for, you know, generations to come.
Yeah. Now, you've had a few boats over the years, Bruce. What do you fish out of these days?
Well, I've still got my Reflections Sport Fisher, which is, well, if you have a look in the book, and there's a photograph of Misbehaving there. And I've had that since new, which is now coming up 26 years. Done over 5,000 hours on a Cummins BT 250 engine. She's on a V-drive, one of the few. An exceptionally good boat. They were originally designed and built as gunboats for Malaysia and Chile for drug smuggling and people smuggling and all that sort of carry on. So they're a high-speed performance hull. And I can honestly say, in 20-odd years, 25, 6 years now, I guess, it's never frightened me. And life's a trade-off with all boats, what is the perfect boat? There's just Kath and I, so it's good accommodation forward, trade-offs a little bit in the main saloon and the smaller galley area there, but the cockpit is the size of most footers, and 80% of your boating is done in the cockpit, fishing and relaxing and enjoying it. So, yep, she's still number one boat, but yeah, I've had centre consoles, I've had tinnies, I've had glass boats, timber boats, you name it, over my life, But yeah, Misbehaving's just the bee's knees. So
you do a fair bit of overnighting, do you? What would be the idea of your perfect fishing trip? Tell me, your perfect fishing trip.
Perfect fishing trip would be with, first of all, your friends, the people you're going to enjoy it with. You really want them. And let's say we're going to set a mission. We're going to go away for the weekend, and we're going to go overnight. So what do we want to take as far as the food goes? And perhaps if we plan a mid-year Christmas party for all our friends. So we'll go away, say on a Friday night, slip away in the late afternoon, have a wee fish, perhaps put the flounder net down to get a few flounder, catch a few bait fish over a few rums, and then we get out the next morning. We're going to target. We're going to target a kingfish, and we want some John Dory and some snapper, and if the boys are there for a cray dive or whatever, because I'm not allowed to dive anymore, we'll go out and get a crays and a couple of crays. That's all you need, and some scallops. So you're coming back with an amazing smorgasbord of food, and that's the perfect one, is when you come back and you share it with others.
You got my mouth watering there, Bruce. Crayfish had the best thing I think I'll go and do after or when I'm allowed, is go and sneak off the north end of Taira Beach and go for a bit of a snorkel for a few crays hanging up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a fishery that we've got to protect too. I think 6 is a crazy limit nowadays. We should take, 1 or 2. That's plenty, and it is a treat. And that's what we've got to respect, is that, they're very, very slow growing, and it's a limited resource. And again, the habitat, especially in the closer indoor areas, like you said, where you went for a dive, and I know exactly where you went for a dive, just off Takapuna there, is that, again, the pollution, which is the natural, and you can't do anything about it. It's increased traffic and increased people and the likes of that. So again, with the increased population, the first book I did, we had a population of about 860,000 people in Auckland. Well, we're now about 1.5. So the pressure on everything is so much greater. So again, 7 fish. The thing that I'd most like to see is from September 1 to, say, December 1, that we ourselves in the leisure take 3 snapper per person. So if we dropped it back whilst the spooling's on, and if in conjunction the commercial take was taken back in the same percentage, they keep their total overall quota, but they can fish the balance of that at a different period, the increase in spawning fish, you imagine what that would do in 7 years' time, which is basically in a Hauraki Gulf, what it's going to take a fish to get to a legal size, which means it's spawned at least once, if not twice. We could do an amazing amount of good for the fishery and reduce our cray take down to 2. That's all we need for a feed. It's a privilege. It's not a right,
And do you think, as recreational fishermen, do you think we make the most of our catch? Like I know in a lot of other cultures, pretty much all the fish is used. Like you go to Vanuatu and you bring a yellowfin tuna to the beach there, to the village, and it'll be broken down into a million different pieces within 30 seconds, and even the gut lining will be eaten, and the head will be boiled up for a fish stew. And do we make the most of our catch in New Zealand? What do you do yourself, Bruce?
Well, things have changed. And the one thing that is positive with immigration is that we've learnt a lot more. And we have always taken the fish that we've had for granted, and we've never actually got the true value out. And it's probably only in the last 20 years that we're starting to really fully appreciate what a whole fish is all about. Now, the moment I catch a fish, for example, it's ickied straight away. It's put into ice or into a slurry, and even a little runabout that maybe doesn't have room for a big slurry bin. If you just simply get a small bucket and stick a frozen Coke bottle in there, for example, slip that fish in there, that's chilling that flesh down. So that's maximising it. It's not flat thrashing around and bruising itself or bruising other fish in a fish bin. Chill it down, then put it into a fish bin. So generally what I'll do is I will actually gut those fish that day, take the gut out, and that goes straight into the potato patch, mate. And the roses just love it. So then what I do is I would invariably just leave those fish to set overnight. So once they've set overnight, I'll then break them down, and I'll take the skin and bone them. And then what I'll do with the heads, for example, and the wings, I'll cut those off and I'll freeze those down in Ziploc bags so they're nice sealed so they don't get freezer burnt. With the wings, what I do is I'll salt and brown sugar them as if I'm going to smoke them, but then just freeze them down. So when I do a smoke, you bring them all out, you put them in the freezer, in the smoker along with the heads, and they are just outstanding. The frames and the skin then end up in the potato patch as well, or in the garden.
Yeah.
So nothing is wasted whatsoever. Even the bony bits, when we take the bone line out, well, the dog loves that. And it's all good stuff, so there is no waste, whereas before we used to do it. And the thing is, it's like, I love smoking fish because that way one fish, for example, would feed, say, Kath and I, whereas if we smoke it down and mix it into a sauce, that will actually feed like 4 people. So it'll go a lot further. So, and the other thing we're doing is smoking down jack mackerel, for example, what we considered bait. And it's beautiful. There's a lot of things that we can do. Sashimi. We break down a kingfish. Well, there is nothing left on the backbone. We got one kingfish out of the barrier a couple of years ago, Cass' first decent-sized kingfish, and it's fed 37 people with sashimis and, kingfish steaks. And, there's an amazing amount of food that's on a single fish. So, yeah, nothing's wasted.
I think that's what I love about kingfish is, one fish will feed a lot of people, and it's a whole lot less filleting as well when you've only got to chop one fish up as opposed to a whole lot of snapper.
Oh, that's right, but I enjoy it. It's a bit of a skill and it's an art, and that's what I enjoy doing for people. It's a treat.
Yeah, and you touched on jack mackerel. I remember having some Japanese anglers out with me a few years back. And we got some real nice big jack macks that we took out for live baits, and we had a good session on the kingies. And it was about midday. The guys are, Captain, we go back to bait grounds. We catch more mackerel. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah, you want to get some more liveys and you want to come back out here and catch some more kingies? No. We catch mackerel to eat. I'm like,
yeah. It
was actually very, very, very tasty.
Well, funny enough, I had some Japanese on board, and we were, it was funny as buggery. It was during the America's Cup a few years back now, and they were going through the bait like there was no tomorrow because they didn't really understand the fishing, and we were sort of, I was looking at this thing, and I noticed that this guy who struck a fish, the rod tip told me it was a trevally. So I get out on the duck board, and as soon as it came up, as you know, they're very soft mouth. So I was going to drop it straight in the live bait tank, bang. And these guys looked at me, they were sort of a bit fierce on that. Next thing, his mate hooked up on another one. It was a lot bigger. And just, what we call an average size trev. And I said, another trevally. And these guys put the gear away and they watched this guy land it. And I netted this one because it was a reasonably big fish. And next thing they're bowing and they're scraping to each other and saying, oh, you know, number one. And I said, what do you mean number one? He said, oh, number one sashimi fish on Japan market. I said, what do you mean? What's it worth? And he said, oh, $160 on Japan market. And they couldn't believe it, you know, and that's what we take for granted, you know, unbelievable.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to beat trevally for sashimi, that's for sure.
Oh, smoked trevally. That's my pretty much number one.
Yeah. So you're going back to your talking about your ideal trip with mates, and you've got a good collection of seafood there. What you're going to have a dinner party for your mates tomorrow? What would be your preference? What in terms of a fish to cook up, and how would you cook it?
Well, as I say, I'd like to get a variety of fish first and foremost. And one, obviously, if we get a kingfish, sashimi. We're going to have some kingfish steaks, but we're going to do some sashimi. So that's there as a starter, for example. And maybe we'd have some cheeky little whitebait fritters that I might have acquired some whitebait from friends to go with that. And then I'd do some kingfish steaks. And one of the recipes I've actually put in the book is crispy skin snapper. And what I do with those, I actually scale them and then do it with the sesame oil and a whole bunch of bits and pieces. So we're going to serve up a smorgasbord of, you know, John Dory, lightly pan-fried, crispy skin snapper, plus some kingfish steaks and the sashimi. I mean, it's not all bad, eh?
That's pretty good to me. You got my mouth watering. We might have to hook up for a fish once we're allowed back out, Bruce.
Oh, sounds like a damn good idea to me.
Yeah. So back to your book. So Hauraki Gulf hotspots. Workups fishing out in the Gulf seems to be all the rage. Is that sort of the spots you're talking about, or what's sort of the main methods you're discussing in the book and the types of spots?
Main methods, I mean, out in the Gulf, the workups and that, because they will move all the time. There is no structure there out in the Gulf. Apart from anchorite rock, it's pretty much very flat, sandy. It's like a huge big paddock. And if you look at cattle, for example, they wander around and graze all over the place. And what will affect the fish out there is obviously the nutrients and where the bait fish are. So there's no one spot. You go out there with your binoculars, you look for the workups, you look for the birds. Mother Nature's signposts, I call it, you know, the birds. And if you look at the height of the birds, will tell you a little bit about it. And often you'll find that as the tide is slackening off, the bait fish will rise. So the higher those birds are up, they are looking. When they start circling lower and lower, that's telling me that bait fish is starting to come up. And then once they get to a certain level in the sky, then they're coming down at 100 mile an hour. So they know that all those fish have come up. So out in the outer Gulf, yep, you've got to have a couple of things, which is one, good safe bait to get out there because it's pretty open water. And you've got to have the ability to get out there with your mates and do it. Now, it's not really something apart from those really nice, calm, sunny days where mum and the kids want to get out there and do it as well, just rolling around. So the book is really targeted for those people who just want to get out there with the family, go and have a little fish in a bay or wherever, have family time on the beach. But also, you know, there's likes of myself and you and I, you come up and we'll jump on the boat, we'll fang off across to Rangi, Motuhi, the Noises, or wherever we want and catch fish. So it's where the habitat is, and it's the understanding of what the habitat is, the type of... See, for example, I always say to people, and this is what I learned when I was a kid, snorkeling. You get in there and you fang off around the rocks, and like you'd know, particularly, you look at the bait fish, look at the way the piper move, where they are. Shit, there's a bloody kingfish in 2 feet of water chasing these things. Oh, there's a cray under that little rock. Look at the different types of kelp. You know, when you look at that necklace type seaweed, there's very little there for limpets and snails and crabs and all that natural food of the fish on that sort of area. But look at the leafy type of kelp. You know, it's holding a whole bunch of, you know, snails and all that sort of food. So that's going to tell you if you're looking for an area and that type of habitat, rock structure, kelp structure there is going to hold those type of fish or more fish. You know, it's a bit like a supermarket. You know, the corner dairy holds so much food because it's only got so much shelf space. have a look at a big bit of rock structure or reef or coastline that's got a whole bunch of leafy kelp. Now that's like, food town, mate. Plenty of shells, plenty of food there, plenty of protection, and that's what fish need. Snapper are big pussies. They get beaten up by storms. You get a cyclone come down on the coast, all those snapper will move in, and they'll move in behind the islands and seek protection and shelter there because the food's there, but they don't like getting beaten up. So, it's what life's about. Get out there and look.
Yeah, and I think definitely diving. I think becoming a scuba diver definitely opened my eyes up to the habitat down there, and I think that's been taken up another step once I got more and more into freediving as well. You definitely see a lot more, and definitely picked up a few more kingy spots as a result of being in the water and seeing it with my own eyes. I remember just at Christmas a while ago, I thought, I'll just go have a little snorkel in around there, and there's bait and kingfish everywhere. Just hopped out of the boat, chucked a stick bait out, and boom. And that's been a good spot ever since. So,
yeah, that's it. I mean, and that's the neat thing with kids, particularly, to learn about the environment. You get them in there swimming around, and they get the feel of the water. They get to see it. Like you would see more skin diving than using a bottle, because you're actually more vigilant all the time. So you're looking around. So that's the learning process going on, and it's like whenever we're going for a swim and a dive, I see a bit of rubbish on the bottom, we always pick it up and bring it home, and I tell people, every time you should have come back into the marina or onto the boat ramp, see if you can bring up 3 bits of rubbish. You see something floating on the surface, bring it home. If we all do that, you imagine 1,000 boats out there around the coast, 3,000 bits of rubbish that aren't in the water polluting it.
Wise words, Bruce. Wise words. So maybe just to wrap up, so there's someone out there that's just getting into fishing. What advice would you have to them to learn a little bit more and get the most out of the sport?
Well, to me, people say to me, what's the best day to go fishing? Any day. Do I look at the moon phase? Do I look at anything else? No, I look at the weather. And that's simply what it's all. If it's safe to go, get out there, because you know what? The hardest days you're going to learn more. And if you don't try and you don't know, you're never going to learn anything. And if you keep on going back to the same spots all the time, what do you learn from that? Nothing. So again, with the book, this book takes you from the harbour bridge, basically to the bottom end of Waiheke. So no matter where you're fishing on the inner Gulf, there's so many different spots there, and it will help people to understand what the habitat is. So if you've only got a couple of hours, sneak out and do it. You don't have to go a long way, but in that time, for example, St Heliers Bay Beach, where we fish, there's a little reef off there, but you can go out there in 10 feet of water, cast a stray line bait, no sinker whatsoever. You'll catch fish. You can do that off Takapuna Beach. You can do it any bit of the coastline around New Zealand. So my best advice to people, get out and try, because that's the only way you're going to learn it.
Yeah, and we're pretty blessed to live in an amazing country like this, where we can go and get a feed of fresh fish wherever we want. Thanks so much, Bruce, for having a chat to us, and thank you for being such a great ambassador for our sport and our industry. Wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll hook up for a fish once we're allowed back out. You have to come down and come out to the Aldies.
Do a bit of market research, do you think? Absolutely. Hey, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing, because, I mean, I always believe if we all do a little bit and help one another, it's all going to be a better thing. And this, hopefully, after we get out of this lockdown, as long as we always remember what we've got out there, we've got to respect it. And, take a feed and let the rest breed, and that's just what life's all about. Get out and enjoy it, guys. Just take every opportunity in this wonderful country we're blessed with.
Awesome. Thanks, H Bros. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll catch you next time.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.